Good evening, Thomas.
Hey, Mike.
Hey, we that had this big scheduling snafu on my end, which prevented me from doing the show with you on Halloween like we planned. And I know we had a thing, and we're gonna have to make that up later in the year to get a little bit more festive. But in any case, this the ending our month of coverage in October of Halloween horror movies. This week we're covering a couple extra ones, metal related, some
Yeah, definitely.
heavy metal related.
Yeah. Yep.
But this is the first last Nerdom. I'm Mike, and my host is Thomas, and we're about to jump in this. And in any case, Lords of Chaos and Deathgasm are the two that we're covering today with a heavy metal focus. Which one did you want to hop into first?
Let's probably take the lighter one first and do Deathgasm.
Yeah.
But yeah, even though we weren't able to do it on Halloween, I did ask for the metal band I was going to have come in to come in today, and I've got the singer here, and right now he's the guitar player, and this is the bass player here, and then have the drummer, and then the singer. It's Baby Yoda Joker.
Nice.
Some of the fun guys I have here with me. Yeah. So yeah, just for the uninitiated, which you probably were, black metal is
very much so. I'll say that as we get into it, we'll roll into it.
Yeah. Yeah, with Lords of Chaos, we can get into the big history of it, but it's basically comes out of Norway. It's spread across the the world like a virus. You can find black metal bands now in U.S., even in Mexico. So in I think in Japan, all over. But yeah, so Deathgasms, basically your teenagers getting up to mischief and unleashing a demon, and while they're unleashing a demon, they're also trying to be in a black metal band as well.
Yeah, I would say hijinks, but I'd say probably evil hijinks ensue. There's definitely some dark comedy there, which I did appreciate. But yeah, this one I'm still digesting. I like the premise, but there's some things that like were. I mean, it was all right overall. Like I think I would say the other one that I saw was a little bit easier to digest from my perspective on things. But this one was interesting. Had you seen this one before? Prior to
yeah, it's probably like you. The first time I saw it, I was kind of on the fence about it, but since we were doing Lords of Chaos, I wanted to pair it with something, and this seemed like the closest thing. And I enjoyed it a little bit more the second time I saw it. That it takes place in New Zealand, so you've got the funny accents that are enjoyable. I always find the New Zealand accent a little funny. I don't know why that is. But yeah, and it's very reminiscent of that whole Evil Dead, Dead Alive sort of horror, over the top horror comedy, with buckets and buckets of blood and gore, and some of the stuff just kind of surprises you. At one point, they're looking for um, some things to fight against the demon, and they go through one of the parents' church stuff, and they find out that there's something a little bit different in those boxes than they were expecting, that then they use for some obscene purposes of dispatching some demons. So there's a lot of vulgar humor, vulgar just it's one of those movies where you just let it kind of wash over you. You don't try to put your own moral compass in it, because the characters will bend against it and possibly break it.
Right. Yeah. The devil's music. Devil's music is what you'll find. Yeah, I did like this one. I think this one was a little bit easier to digest than the other one. But they were both like something different completely than I'm used to. Even for
Right,
horror,
definitely.
like, for sure,
Yeah.
for sure. But they both have their
Yeah.
pluses and some lows, I would say too. But for the most part, they were good.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know if IBM has the picture. I'm sure they do, but there's a meme picture that even if people out in the audience haven't seen the movie, they may have seen the picture. It's the guy dressed up all in his black metal glory, and the girl, the blonde-headed girl sitting next to him on a bench in the park. They've used that for a meme quite often. I'm not sure if it's in there. It should be. It's one of the iconic.
Don't
Yeah, it's one of those iconic images from the movie.
Oh my god! Holy cow! Wow, they didn't stop with any of this, did they? They went right in.
Not at all. Yeah, and but yeah, when
like making me laugh.
just saying it. Yeah. Yeah, if you're kind of squeamish with gore, you definitely don't want to go into this, even though it's like I said, the tone's over the top, so it doesn't get serious at all. But yeah,
warn you, like, they telegraph stuff way ahead of time too, which is kind of typical with some of these. But yeah, like, I mean, it wasn't like, yeah, it was like, I wouldn't say it was offensive, but it definitely weren't afraid of blood.
Yeah, the tongue was firmly in cheek, so you didn't have to like I said, it's definitely not one of those movies that you're probably going to have a problem with, like I said, morally. But yeah, it's like I said, it's basically about a outcast teen trying to find his way in the world, having this the stack. Yeah, there, that's the picture. The stack, the world stacked against you to start with. But yeah. Oh, you're on mute. I didn't know if you know that.
Yep. No. Yep. Thank you. Yep. No. That's. I was trying to find it, but yeah. Hopefully, I'm just glad they had. You just don't know with IMDb sometimes, but
yeah. I've seen that as a meme where they put their own little slogans in them there, like her being comfortable with my metal, or something, stuff different. If I was prepared, might have pulled some of the memes, but yeah, I'm sure those younger people out there that watch our podcast, if there is any, then they're probably familiar with this picture and the various memes to it. So this is where where it comes from. And there wasn't a whole lot of information on the Wikipedia. I didn't check IMDb about the making of it, but I know that there was a planned sequel to it that got canceled, so
okay.
A few years back. So evidently it did well enough to where they were planning a sequel, but then I guess for whatever reason, maybe the pandemic or whatever kind of got in the way.
The humor, like, this movie was pretty clever for what it was doing. I'm no connoisseur of movies to the nines, but it it's still like kind of it definitely. So when I was growing up, like, there would be different things that would come through, and I remember the playing the record backwards, and would summon or say, maybe not summon, but it would say different material. What I grew up through that. I was a little bit older by the time it hit me, but like, I didn't hit the 80s hysteria or the late 80s hysteria of like devil music and whatnot. But there was definitely my parents would weave in and out of religiosity, I would call it. And there was this one particular dude named David Benoit, and he was like a pastor, and his whole shtick was basically taking like famous heavy metal or rock bands from the 80s and whatnot. And then he would, kind of go into a spiel of like why it was, bad or whatever. So like in a roundabout way, I kind of had my own exposure, my own personal experience. Like I never dug into that stuff,
Right.
but
Yeah.
It's just a little bit ridiculous when you get down to it. It's just like, well, you're kind of hopping off a cliff. I think that it helped me discern like what good information is and what maybe opinion.
Right. Yeah, that's good. Yeah,
with an agenda pushed through with it, I would say.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's I was around and cognizant of the satanic panic when it was going on, and
right.
It's yeah, and there was always some. I remember some probably religious backed program about the evils of metal and Satanism and all that. And yeah, at the time I was into, Bigfoot and all that stuff. So that was right up my alley. I wanted to know all about these demons and satanic rituals. And they would go to, those underpasses or drainage places where the guys had painted the spray painted the upside down cross and the pentagram and all that stuff. It's
right.
Look, there's Satanism when it's a couple of brain dead teenagers just goofing off. But yeah, and I remember being in class and someone had the Motley Crue album Shout at the Devil, and this was the albums back in the 80s, so they had the whole album and they had it pulled out, and two or three of them were going over the lyric of the album religiously, and I was like, oh man, that's so evil to myself. Only later to find out, it's not quite as evil as it played out to be. And tying back to Halloween, I learned very early on not to trust the media because I and two or three other of my classmates in I think it was the third grade, were interviewed by our local newspaper about Halloween, and they took a picture of us, and I was really excited. And when I read the article, it had my picture, and I was a little bit heavy set, like I am now. And they took my quote and cut it up to say that I loved candy, and that was not what I said. And so from there,
are you serious?
Yeah.
That's funny. I have my own.
Yeah, from there on, I never trusted the media. And whenever I saw somewhere where someone saying, I got misquoted, I go, I know, I know from experience.
Right. Yeah. No, something kind of similar happened to me too. Like it wasn't necessarily about metal or music or Halloween, but I remember some group on the fringe was like protesting or whatever, demonstrating, and I when I was a teenager, I would go through. I had pretty short hair, or whatever, and like at one point, I had a bad haircut, and I shaved it off, like with a razor, and like it looked like garbage. And anyway, and I remember walking down Main Street of my town that I lived in, Fond du Lac. Anyway, I remember like the news media was like there, and like they saw me with my bald head. And they apparently I knew why they were interviewing, but I didn't put two and two together until I was like, I didn't know that. And then, but they were interviewing me because I was bald headed, because it was something like skinhead adjacent, essentially. So like, I think they were looking to get a thing, and I gave a very milquetoast, like, what do you think about this? And I'm like, I think everybody should be able to say what they want or whatever,
Right.
as long as they're very generic, standard, citizen answer. And like, I don't think it was quite what they wanted, but they, they didn't quote me and they didn't use my thing. But I was just like, what were you expecting to? Well, anyway. Yeah. So yeah, no.
Instead of trying to find the story, they were trying to fix the story with you. Yeah, fix you into the story.
Right. Yeah, I just remember it being like, whatever. Like, and then I didn't know at the time, but like I was just like, sure, I'll talk. Yeah, whatever. I think I actually was underage at the time, but but I had a very a very boss looking facial hair goatee thing going on, and I did not look 16 or 17, whatever it was that I looked like,
Right.
or I didn't represent my age. And there's another story I'll share offline with that. But in any case, yeah.
But yeah,
I have
to. Yeah, no, I have to thank the reporter because it made me skeptical from there on and made me look further into the truth as far as trying to find as many sources of something to verify. And that all leads back from Halloween and me being misquoted on my my love of candy.
Yeah, and
I think my exact quote was, "I like dressing up and getting candy," and then it morphed into I love getting candy, and I was like, no. And being that age, you're starting to start looking at your body and making judgments about it. So I was already kind of I guess conscious of my weight. So having that quote, it really pissed me off to where I remember it, up till today.
Yeah, and with that perspective, this movie, Brody, played by Milo Cawthorne, he is basically, he kind of like, there's another subtext underneath this too, like where he is like, he's standing up against the bully, and the bully is society, is norms, suburban norms, that kind of thing. His ultra religious, family that are trying to shape his thing in a certain kind of way, and he's just like, I'm not having it, and I want to be me. And this, in a way, it's kind of a coming of age story. Like, well, I loosely say that, but like, with its own little, tongue in cheek, like you said, definitely.
With
in
some
your
quirks.
face.
Yeah.
Right. This is a movie I could see like where people would turn off after like maybe an hour or so, or 30 minutes, where they just don't get it, doesn't resonate. But if you stick with it, there is some good to it to be had, for sure. I would say that.
If you're you're a fan of Evil Dead or Peter Jackson's Dead Alive, I think you could get something out of it. But yeah, if you're if you're more into, like my older sister, into quiet horror, this is not something that'll win her over in any way. But it's fun, and it kind of actually. With the main character Brody, I didn't think about it, but you made me think that it kind of ties into the other movie, Lords of Chaos, in that it's about people looking to rebel against something. Right. They're not quite sure what they're rebelling against, but they want to be as quote unquote as evil as possible.
Yeah, I saw that as a natural rebel myself. Like I kind of look for that, what do they call it, contrarian, or opposite kind of point of view or whatever. Like, for sure, like I'm always like playing devil's advocate or looking for that, like, okay. And then that goes hand in hand with what we were just talking about, the media. You learned at a young age, and as I did, like, you learn to read something and then kind of hold it maybe a little bit far from you, metaphorically speaking, and then maybe bring it in closer when you had confirmation or something like that, which is hilarious that nobody in the world learned that skill growing up, because we have information and disinformation and whatever. Like, well, you don't have our own brain that you can think of. You don't have the internet. Anyway, doesn't matter. But no, I was going to say too. The other thing I wanted to say was this also has like well, obviously the image that we're on right now and have been for the last little bit. There is a kind of a little sweetness there to it, like where it echoes some other movies too, but like that, it definitely stands on its own 2 feet. Not solidly. I would not say that I think it kind of wobbles a little bit here and there, but it's still it's not a slow burn. You get into it right away, and as long as you're cool with the pacing and the concepts, like it's, you can find something to suss out from it that you can like. I think, in my opinion, anyway. But you're right. You're dead on with Peter Jackson's Dead Alive, for sure. There is that same kind of pacing of comedy and horror and everything all in between and whatnot, and
Yeah. But yeah, I think at least you have something to add, and we could probably go on to our main main course of Lords of Chaos.
Yeah, no, this was cute. It was good, and I'd say check it out. I definitely, it has its moments for sure, but this one, man, what did you do to like? It's kind of set up like not unlike what we were just talking about last couple weeks, like found footage, kind of sort of in a way, like where it's like a ad hoc documentary kind of vibe kind of thing going on with this one. This one was a little bit deeper than the other one. Obviously, the other one's pretty much straight off the rack as you pull it. This one had some more interesting depth to it. And how did you find this one? And had you seen this one before? I assume before or now.
Yeah, I believe I saw. I got the Blu-ray, but I first saw it as a digital download, and I think legal. I bought it, but yeah. So the Blu-ray is actually uncut. So I think has a lot more gore in it than than the one I'd previously saw, because that kind of stood out to me in my second viewing. But yeah, it's I got into the black metal music scene towards the very end of the 90s. It started, the whole scene started in Norway in the beginnings or mid 90s. That's where most of the bands came onto the scene. And it's based off of a book, Lords of Chaos, as well. And I read that back when it came out. And when I read it, it stood out to me. And the story that it tells, because the Lords of Chaos kind of covers the whole beginning to what was that time the current day scene as far as the black metal. It went over several different bands, but what the actual movie focuses on, I saw would be a really interesting movie. And I kind of, every once in a while, I toy with in head how they would put it together, and it surprisingly does almost exactly how I would have done it if I had the expertise and know-how and could write a script and all of that. Very, very closely. And I was kind of happy that it actually got made in close to what I wanted it to be. And so yeah, that was one of the huge surprises of the movie. It's also but yeah, just to get back to the black metal history, it started off in the mid 90s, and it was in Norway, which at the time, I think it is currently, Norway has the highest per capita income for its citizens. So it's not like where rap came out of in America, where you had a bunch of underprivileged people creating music about their sorrow and their struggles with life. This is middle class, sons and daughters of middle class citizens, middle to upper class actually. And so they the only struggles they know is, well, they don't like the church, blah blah blah. They're into dark stuff, they like Venom. So it starts off somewhat innocent. They want to do they wanted to be the blackest, the evilest metal is, because metal has that stigma about it.
Right. So, they want to be the kings of the darkness and everything that goes in with the imagery and reputation and all that.
And they pick up from punk that, to become popular, that's not what the scene was about. It was about being most evil, most underground. And so even with their album covers and the logos for their band names, they make the band name so indecipherable you can't tell. If you don't know who it actually is you can't actually read it or piece it together very easily,
right,
if at all. And so yeah, so there's that struggle. And so basically it focuses on the band Mayhem, and the audience may be kind of wondering how this fits into maybe a horror themed Halloween show, since it's a biopic about a music band. But this proves that it could be a horror movie in and of itself.
right.
The story.
Yeah, yeah. And my background, like, I'm not really with death metal, but probably the closest one, and probably not. But growing up was like Rammstein. Like I got to them. They're not the same thing though. I think they're definitely heavy,
No.
but they're not
Yep.
death metal.
Yeah.
My understanding is,
Yeah.
but
yeah. And so the scene, with a lot of scenes, there's that competition, and if you're trying to be the most evil band, it tends to lead to bad things. And in this case, there's murder, suicide, there's church burnings. Those that aren't familiar with black metal may be familiar with the church burnings in Norway at the end of the 90s, because that became world news. And my kind of stance, I came into metal and it's weird because in Arkansas, you don't think there would be a big metal scene, but in my very local, video/music store, it was a Hastings. I don't know. That's sort of a big chain that was around for a good portion of the country. So some people may know Hastings, but the Hastings, I guess whoever run the music department was a big metalhead, and there was a big section for death metal and black metal. And me just kind of walking through it, I was kind of taken with various bands. And once got out of Norway and that tight music scene, the imagery and the sound took over, as and not the the criminal element. So it was more about the music as opposed to the actual scene. So it got lesser. So those are the bands I found first, like Cradle of Filth and Dimmu Borgir. They're more kind of a symphonic black metal as well. So yeah, these that started off, they were very primitive in their play. You may think it's sort of similar to death metal, and it is. It's sort of like a sister to death metal. But the way I explain it is death metal plays a little bit faster, and the vocals sound a bit like the Cookie Monster, that kind of sound. Whereas black metal, they play a little bit slower for the most part. The way they mix it, the vocals don't stand out higher than the music. It's kind of mixed all together, and the vocals more screamy type kind of sound to it, as opposed to a growl. And that's in my layman's terms of just being fans of the music. That's how I would kind of describe it for our audience out there. But yes. Mm-hmm.
That's good, because I would not be able to do justice to how describe what I heard or saw. Like, it's definitely like the edge is there.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're squeamish, don't watch. But but you probably already know that beforehand if this is going to appeal to you. And I'm still kind of on the fence. Generally speaking, like, I probably need to wait a little bit and then rewatch it and then get a more refreshed, mature take on it. But it wasn't horrible. It definitely had its own message, and it's kind of hard they weave in and out of what they're trying to do and whatnot, and it's very much in your face. And the one thing I will say is that it tackles a lot of subject material that modern movies would never touch or would lightly touch. But it's all in the same go.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
it definitely it pushes the boundaries for sure, but not in a not in a way that I've seen other horror movies do. Like there is still a kind of a point to it. I mean, for the storytelling and whatnot, it's fictional, but it's still the same. Like they still they do a pretty good job of like
Yeah.
Of like giving you to care about the characters anyway, or like just like kind of like the melancholy, or not melancholy, but kind of like when you see their different arcs and where they end up and what happens
Yep.
to them and whatnot. It's
Yep.
I don't have the words, but
Yeah.
for sure.
a lot of times in biopics, it's a love letter to the band or the singer or the artist that's about. Whereas this movie, it is a love letter to the music, but it's warts and all, so that you
No,
get you get all the gory teeth. I like the tagline for it. It's the truth, the lies, and what actually happened. And there's a lot of fans of black metal that don't like the movie because they either gloss over something or they tell it for story-wise purposes. They don't tell it exactly how it happens.
so
They
it's not pure
just
in their eyes.
right. Right. And if you're a black male person, you want to have the purest, darkest stuff. And when I was
which is what they're shooting for this and for the other thing too, a little bit.
Yeah. So that the people that made it, and it's by Ridley Scott's production company. So I was kind of interested in seeing how that would have an effect on the movie, but it's just as raw and messy as I would expect this movie to be. And I think the director is also a photographer, and that's interesting in that a lot of stuff during the 90s when you were into black metal, there was not a lot of media coverage for them. The media coverage were magazines. So you had like Kerrang and different magazines, and so there's these iconic images of people, and the movie does a great job of if you're fans of the band, they recapture a lot of those iconic images in there where various people are photographing them, and those are the iconic images. The real ones are what yeah, that's it. That's when that's where that photograph is from. That's what they were doing at the time. So that's kind of interesting because that's how I remember a lot of stuff that I read about these bands, and a lot of these Norwegian bands I didn't really get into because like there's Euronymous that started Mayhem. That's the main character of the story. He narrates it.
Right.
And there's Varg that comes later. His real name's Christian, which they always call him that to antagonize him. But there was this antagonism between the two, and there's a murder that takes place. I guess we won't spoil it for those that haven't seen it. But when I read it in Lords of Chaos, it read like Beavis and Butthead does a murder, and this is exactly how they portray it in the movie. Yeah, exactly. That's how they portray it in the movie, and it's like, okay, yeah, they're portraying them as boneheads for what they did, and so I have a hard time like buying music by murderers. So even though I kind of like the sound of black metal and the evil imagery. But yeah, I can't buy anything by a murderer or, Varg in his later times also becomes, black metal started off as very much just about satanic imagery and being black and black metal and black evil and whatnot. So that, that they didn't read like Anton LaVey. They didn't get deep into it. They were just into that mystic imagery. In black metal, there's only so many songs you can sing about Satan. so some of them branch off, and Varg branched off into Nazism and that imagery, and I definitely can't get into that.
No,
But
definitely not here. No, yeah, and you're right. Yeah, there is like a big thing here. And growing up, like and for the audience who's not familiar, Anton LaVey is the original author of the Satanic Bible, and was made out to be this monstrous, hideous thing. And when you get down to it, if you actually read the literature, it's basically just like do no harm, do what serves you best. But it's not like that. It's when you get into it, it's not quite like they're not doing mock sacrifices of babies or all the media horse shit that goes out in the world or whatever. Like it's a lot more mundane.
Yeah. Yeah, so the bands
kind of like off foot. Sorry, go on.
No problem. But yeah, so a lot of the music that it branches off into Sweden and various places, and a lot of those black metal bands get into Vikingism and singing black metal songs about Vikings and the mythology, which I really quite enjoy, like the band Enslaved, and and like I said, it's spread all globally, so the whole black metal kind of imagery kind of goes everywhere. Right. And one of my favorite black metal bands, Summoning, they're more electronic. They have a lot more symphonic sounds to them, and they're not as heavy, and sing about Middle Earth, J.R. Tolkien's Middle Earth, and they go in the perspective of the orcs and the evil elements of Middle Earth.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I read about. I do not claim to have any knowledge of death metal or black metal or any of this stuff, but I have read that some bands, some albums are influenced by like the Tolkienian slant. There's even ones that will go back through like basically taking like Wagner's opera or operatic thing, Rise of the Valkyries, or was classic music, classical music rather, and kind of put their own spin on it, sometimes with different takes or whatever. Like again, this is just all academic that I've read over the years, but like they take that and then they kind of, if you were to see this opera from a different perspective musically, this is what it would look like. The same thing goes into, that's how albums used to be written in general. Like classic rock, there was a theme or something or a motif that they would touch on occasionally, or there was a thing that I would say pop bands in general, and not just any kind of genre of music, but like artistry has kind of like where there's like, I will say this, whether you like the music or not, if there's true artistry involved, they'll have some kind of a central tenet behind it or some kind of really serious focus behind it. And they leave it to you to, just like all these good things, whether it's, this is obviously the genre of music, they leave it to you to kind of figure out for yourself, like how you feel about it. If you even know about, the background or whatever, like, or if you open up the album cover and kind of dig in and read, like, obviously if you're a fan, you're going to do that. But yeah, that's what I'm familiar with. Like they're death metal, black metal, like they're not afraid of taking on. Is that true across the board? Because I'm not familiar. Like, is it true across, like that they would take bigger kind of themes and like start an album and then like the album actually has something in it, or a story to tell, or a feeling to feel, or whatever, if that makes sense.
Yeah, there's certain bands that do that. There's certain bands like I'm even though the album's about or the movie's about mayhem, like I said, I didn't really listen to a whole lot of their stuff in particular back in the day, just because there's so much controversy, and I wasn't sure if I wanted to spend my money on people that did what they did. But yeah, I think their songs are more about just telling little basic dark stories, whereas like a band like Immortal, they have a big theme for their album, and yeah, they have a big story, they have a whole mythology about their about who they are. Immortal, they kind of lend more towards always think of wrestling when I think of them, because the whole black metal imagery is more, I guess, more. I don't know if they see it this way, but it seems more like kind of a carnival, sort of like a big production kind of thing, where it's not to be taken seriously. Well, you take it as seriously as it is in that moment, but you're not going to go away thinking, how serious wrestling is or how serious this band is afterwards. But when you're in that world, you feel it's fun to be within that world and believe in that little world while you're in it. But you could step away at any time and not have a disconnect with reality.
and you're obviously more connected to the scene than I am. But like, and the other thing that you find out about Varg the character, and this may or may not be a spoiler ahead, but like, there's a very kind of like, this is just every day for him, and you realize that he is the sullied, as it were, convicted murderer, so he accepts who he is, and he lives his destiny, or whatever you want to call it, as it is, and there is no there's no looking back, or there is no repentance or changing of direction, or that kind of thing. He is that is him, and if you don't like it, hit the bricks,
Yeah, and he's a very interesting character in that, even though he has all these deep beliefs, in the end he's all surface level. He never thinks too far deep into things, and like he does, he's always wanted to take credit, because he's one of the ones that did the church burnings. He's wanted to take the credits for it, but Euronymous, the head of the band, is like, no, you can't do that, because then you'll expose all of us.
Well, then you'll end what right, yeah, they're they always have a very standoffish kind of frenemy type vibe with them and the band, or whatever, that I kind of picked up on, like. But that kind of is par for the course for this, because everything's on the edge like, everything is kind of like, are we in or out, or are we,
right?
Like,
yeah. How evil are we actually? How much of it is an image, and how much of it is reality? And there's certain characters in it, like Hellhammer, who's their drummer, is like, he nopes out anytime it gets a little evil, or goes beyond the image and goes into like church burnings and whatnot. He's like, nope. And there's certain ones in the scene that are like, nope. No, thank you. And it's kind of, but it's that core group. And guy that plays Euronymous is Rory Culkin, who's famously the brother of Macaulay Culkin, and he does a really good job of portraying the scare. When I heard he was cast for the role, I was like, what are they doing? And then when I saw the movie, because the guy in reality it wasn't as attractive as Rory is, but I think that was kind of playing into, it being a movie. You probably wanted a nicer looking guy as your lead, so that at times you could relate to him. At the times you needed to relate to him, you could, whereas the times where you had to step back, go, oh well, yeah, this guy, I can't agree with what he's doing here. You could step back away from him, and I think he really kind of dived into the role and let him become his own. And there's one character, he calls himself Dead, which is on the screen there. He ultimately commits suicide in the movie, and that kind of plays a major part in the main character's sort of story arc in the movie, going all the way through. It's sort of the shadow that kind of shrouds the whole thing.
Yeah, like, well, definitely, you're right. Yeah, well, the whole thing has a evil in shades of evil, different colored versions of evil, I guess, or however you want to put it. Like, but it definitely it feeds into the hype and the frenetic kind of like wanting to be more and more and more and more and more, and then it's definitely, it's not for the faint of heart. I'll say that for sure. Yeah.
No, definitely not. And it's not your traditional movie where there's a silver lining, there's a redemption at the end. The only silver lining that you could take away from the movie is that the characters in the movie have left an indelible mark on the music scene, whether for good or evil. That's there.
Yeah, and with anything like this, I think it goes to in its favor, whether you like that or not. That it is fictional. Like the movie that we're seeing is fictional. It's a fictional, but it is based on pretty true foundation.
Oh, it's there's maybe they may have fictionalized some of the elements. It is a true story. The names are the names are actually real, and it's all based off of real people. So yeah, these real events that took place in Norway, all of the events, all the major events happened. There was a music store called Hell that Euronymous ran back in the day, and all these people, whoever dies in it really die in real life. And
and he's tied to the music scene and the publishers or whatever, and then that's kind of like their link to the next thing, but they have like a love-hate thing going on there.
Yeah, definitely. There's a deep antagonism and respect between Euronymous and Varg that they can't ever seem to reconciliate into a friendship or a bond. That there's always some type of antagonism that one is experiencing or the other's experiencing at the same time, or so there's with everything's built on evil and mistrust and darkness, it's hard to relate or become friends with your fellow members of the society. There's probably going to be some mistrust between. There's not a like with other music scenes, there's not a bond that is formed. There is a bond, but it's not based on brotherhood and fellowship. It's more or less
no it's based on guilt by association, assuming they even accept guilt, but it's authenticity is the key that they're always driving toward. It seems to me like that's their god, which is surprising of all things. Like like they may be doing these evil things, but really what are they serving? Or like they're serving ultimately, well, that's a whole other philosophy or whatever to kind of take, but whatever, we won't get into that.
And there's I always find it very fascinating that black metal came from Norway and from these people that were mid to higher upper class people, because there's idea that maybe the darkest, blackest metal, you would think it would come from maybe New York in a darker during the 70s where everything was dark and evil, but no, it's, these characters dress and paint themselves up in corpse paint and wear all these crazy clothes, but then when you see them with their parents or family, they're wearing their nice sweaters and their nice little clothes. And Varg, whenever they cut to him being in his apartment, it's very nice looking apartment, very well kept apartment, which and he's potentially the evilest of them all, and he's he's hanging out in this very nice upper class neighborhood that's you wouldn't think there's any crime on the streets at all, and he's the one that's committing the crimes.
Right. Well, and that kind of goes to how he kind of like wants to architect his the world to see him versus like whatever, to kind of have a cover.
And that's maybe why he's so surface level, because everything is surface level to him. It's right. When he wants to be evil, he could put on his jacket, he could paint himself up, put up the posters or the flags of these evil things that he kind of shrouds himself in, but he doesn't have an overall belief. He doesn't have these tenets. He doesn't have this list of things that he wants to be. He just wants to be evil, and that's okay. Well, what's the evilest thing? Oh, well, let's burn down a church. Let's do this. Let's do that. And
psychopath.
Anonymous, and Anonymous always take credit for it, saying, "Oh, well, I suggested that you do this," and he pulls Anonymous in, saying, "Oh, well, you're not doing anything." So, the whole scene was built on surface imagery, and it's much surface. And I think that a lot of their internal conflict came from the fact that when they try to reconcile who they want to portray themselves as being and who they really are two different things, at least for Anonymous. Whereas, and I think towards the end, he was reaching maybe towards a silver lining for his life, maybe turning it around, maybe actually become the music producer that he actually should be. And Varg rebels against that, and he still wants everything to be surface level, and in doing so destroys both of them.
Yeah, they definitely have a more self-serving in the Varg and Culkin's character. They definitely have a more like self-serving framework or whatever. But that's kind of getting into the weeds a little bit. But one of the two is like along with the ride, and one of them is like, well, are you evil or not?
Right. Yeah, I'm gonna go this far, you're gonna go with me, and if you go that far, let's go even further. And he wants to kind of push the mark, or the goalpost. He keeps push the goalpost, whereas the other wants to sit back and kind of reflect on the glory of what they've done, whereas the other one wants to go even further. It's a very interesting and very fascinating look into two people and their dynamics with each other. It's very well acted. The acting in it is really good. It's spot on. It's and it's very fascinating people. If you like your movies or your shows with kind of a moral ambiguity, you may draw parallels. Maybe I haven't seen it in forever, but I keep thinking back on American History X, sort of that kind of that's more maybe on the extreme, but
it kind of reminded me of I just lost train of thought, but it's people who are damned, and either you accept your damnation and revel in it, or you don't, or you have some kind of quasi like on the line kind of thing going on with it. But American History, that's a good one to kind of point to. And maybe in a minute I'll remember what I was going to say, but about the movie that it reminded me of. Oh, The Departed. The Departed. If you're familiar with that, that has a lot, surprisingly a lot to do. Like that's what is in my brain anyway. Like where this kind of parallels, like where if you watch The Departed, it's kind of like you're already damned. How are you going to accept it and then revel in it, and then that's just the way it is, or you're not? Are you trying to half in, half out? But The Departed, it reminded me a lot of The Departed with DiCaprio and Jack Nicholson and but anyway, whatever.
And just in case this pulls in a few people that aren't familiar with their show, that are black metal fans or like metal music, let me make a few points here. I don't claim to be a black metal expert. I'm big into the scene.
Grown up and whatnot.
And I'm from Arkansas, Missouri, so I don't know how deeply you could be into the music being from where I am. I like what I like. I can't say that I've heard everything, especially not recently. The past probably 10 years, I've only kind of dipped my toe into it. Whereas I was like heavily into it back in, like I said, the late 90s and early 2000s. I know that this isn't treated as gospel, that there's not, some of the things are kind of argued over as far as what actually happened, and I think that's the tagline kind of explains that they're telling a story. But yeah, hopefully everybody's got a little something out of this little discussion, and maybe a peek into a world you're not familiar with. And I think that's what our show, the Nerdom's about. It's like exposing, maybe someone's into something very heavily, you've nerded out about something and you want to expose it to a great audience. And hopefully we've given you something. If you're heavily into the scene and know way more than me or Mike, hopefully we've given you a little insight into how we see things from our edge of the world.
and let's be honest, that's how most things are. You see, I mean, we're all fans at heart, and I would laugh at somebody who was like, I'm a death metal, black metal expert. Okay, sure you are, whatever. Like I of all people have no background or anything other than like the lame bands that lame one band that I mentioned. That's a completely different scene, as I understand. But it's no different than like hardcore rap music. That wasn't written for initially when it came on the scene, it was written for white suburban teenagers or whoever's in the suburbs. So you can think your heart is all get out, but at the end of the day, it's still about making money.
Yeah, and I will say, I also say, if you see this movie and you're fascinated by the scene and want to know more, definitely pick up the book Lords of Chaos. That's a definite recommend. I know there's a bunch of other books that if you are big into the scene and want to say down in the comments some other further reading that people could do, or I know there's a documentary that came out a few years ago. I forget the name of it, but it's Let the Light Bring Us or something like that, about the scene. But yeah, if you have anything to recommend, do it down below. Like I said, the Lords of Chaos book has some very interesting things. One of the things that stuck out to me, one of the big names of the scene was the band Ulver, and I love their sense of humor. They at one point got $4,000 to record their album. They ended up, I think, buying a car and suits for 3-piece suits for all the band members, and then they took the crappiest equipment they could out into the woods and recorded their album, and it's become like a classic black metal album because of its bad sound. And I guess it kind of equates with the evilness with them recording out in the woods. So yeah, they're definitely an interesting band. And obviously this is not to be an overview of black metal bands that I'm interested in or anything. I could go all day on this.
This is a movie first and foremost, and it tells a story. And it how deep you want to go in the rabbit hole is up to you, and how it inspires you to go deep, or how interesting, I'll put that way.
And the soundtrack's interesting because it does play some of the classic Mayhem songs and plays a lot of different black metal stuff. But the soundtrack is done by I'll probably get their names wrong. Sugaross. They're a Scandinavian band, and they're more melodic kind of sounding. That's it. Until the Light Takes Us is the documentary that I'm familiar with about the black metal scene. But the soundtrack's very good. And yeah, if after watching the movie, if you're kind of interested in the sounds that were portrayed in the movie, there's like I said, definitely a bunch of stuff out there that you can sample online. And if you're not exactly into the Satan music, the like I said, the black metal's kind of branched out into Middle Earth and Vikings and all sorts of interesting things. And they don't all wear corpse paint anymore. So some have gotten very theatrical and some haven't. There's like with any music scene, there's various levels and various factions of that subgenre of music don't like certain bands and like others, and no, I'm more black metal than you are, and there's sort of like that infighting that I guess punk is very notorious for, as opposed, and it's yeah, I think any music scene goes through growing pains and goes through a life cycle to where, at this point, rock is rock, and there's no argument over who's a rock band and who's not.
Yeah, it's a interesting look in perspective upon the scene. Like I would have never picked this up in a million years had we not, covered this. But still,
Right.
It has its own points. I'm not gonna dog it out. But it's if you're into that scene and you're even adjacent to it, like I would say, go check it out for sure. Like for the normies, might want to take a minute because you might be shocked for sure. Like,
Right.
well, and that's the whole point in a way. But like if you can get beyond that and stick with it, there is a story there and there is some compelling.
Yeah.
Like I said, it's a movie. It's a movie. It was made to be a movie, and it plays like a movie. Plays like a story. There is no happy ending.
Right. Yeah. And I'm always fascinated by different slices of life. This definitely takes you into a world that most of us aren't familiar with. And it does a very good job of glimpsing that, no matter how truthful or untruthful it is. You could say that I love things like set in the 1800s and
Sure.
various time periods. None of us knows what those times were truly like, and that's just kind of like a window into a life that none of us are familiar with. And and so if you're kind of fascinated by that stuff and you don't mind things going quite dark as far as murders and sometimes there's loud music playing, then you might find it fascinating. Like I said, if you ever saw American History X or it's a Departed or one of those movies or shows about the darker side of life, like I said, it's a glimpse into it. And like I said, it's not trying to tell a moral story. It's just trying to look and understand the world that they lived in and what was going on at the time. It, like I said, doesn't like you said at the very beginning, it's very documentary in that it kind of steps back and kind of looks at it from an angle, and the narrator of it is Euronymous, who eventually dies at the end. So it's like I said, it can't be completely truthful if he's narrating it, because his we don't know truly what his voice was. But it's kind of it's fascinating, just looking at that glimpse of life. And like I said, the black metal scene is so far different than it is today than it was then, that's night and day. Same thing is it, like if you look at punk, the punk scene at the very beginning, or the goth scene, if you want to go a little darker, the goth scene's totally different back then as what it is today, and the certain elements have faded away or changed to the point where, even if you're a black metal fan from today, it's kind of fascinating to see the origins of where it came from. Or even if you're not a fan, just looking at a portion of the world that you aren't familiar and probably never would have been familiar with if you hadn't seen it.
Yeah, and this will leave like there are some very cold scenes, and the part well the whole part of the back half of the movie is pretty cold, pretty frigid. So
Yeah.
but that goes to the story they're telling, and it's appropriate for like what they're doing, if that makes sense. But yeah, this is like not for the faint of heart.
Yeah. Oh, and
Deathgasm is more of like a positive, or
yeah,
not positive, but like campy.
lighthearted. Yeah,
Yeah, well,
lighthearted campy. Yeah.
well, yeah, it's lighthearted and can't be compared to this for sure.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, if you watch this one and then Deathgasm as as the second feature is definitely going to be kind of lighten the mood, even though some very disgusting things and evil
Yeah,
things are
right.
happening in it. Oh, and also one other caveat I have is a trigger warning. I hate doing trigger warnings, but for those that don't like animal cruelty and
Yeah, this had a lot of
scenes
it in that.
yeah,
I'm not gonna lie, like I am kind of sensitive to that a little bit, but that's just because I own a dog. And anyway, go
yeah,
on.
yeah. So if you don't see like cats or dogs being killed or whatnot, Lords of Chaos probably isn't the movie for you. If
Yeah,
you're very very hypersensitive about that.
yeah, and I've seen a lot of stuff, but like like I said, this is not. I truly mean that. This is not for the faint of heart. I mean, you if you see something that is not for you and you turn it off, don't go back.
Right, yeah.
Because it doesn't ever get better from that point. I'll just put it that way. Let's
Yeah,
put that
yeah,
way. So
yeah. If you watch it a while and realize this definitely isn't for you, yeah, like I said, don't push forward. Don't try just to get to the end, because
yeah,
things are going to get more intense and and darker as you go. So
yeah, and I don't know, like it's probably going to be a minute before I go back to this one. I'll be honest with you, like there's a lot to take in,
yeah,
even for me.
I really enjoyed the movie first viewing, but yeah, it's very heavy, and so it wasn't until this past week that I actually watched it again, just because I kept thinking, well, yeah, I probably should see that again, but then the whole weight of everything that goes on during the movie, like, gee, am I in the mood for that?
Yeah, I'd probably only recommend this for folks that are in the know, or that are adjacent to black metal, like normies. I would probably not recommend this at all
Yep.
in general. But Deathgasm is a little bit more
Yep.
campy, and it's very much movie like, and all this, and like because, and this is, I think, the strength of this movie, whether you love it or hate it, there is deep, like this is based on reality. I mean, parts of it,
Right.
like were like, so it's just like, holy, like, I mean, obviously not everything that they showed was obviously like to the nines, but like I'm
Mhm.
sure there was some stuff that was like, like not tongue in cheek. It was like true to the news article that you read about it or whatever. If you
Mhm.
read that, something along those lines, or you wouldn't put it past them. Let's put it that way. So like, there is
Yep.
no likable, lovable enemy or anti-hero in this one for sure. Like it's just like
Right.
these people are assholes, and there's just a level of what where they're at and what they are, and like
Mhm.
replace the adjective asshole with evil, and then then there you are. For sure.
Right.
But if
Exactly.
you're brave, there might be something there to stick
Yep.
through it. So
Yeah, yeah, and I guess this is good that it came out a little bit past Halloween because, yeah, Halloween's more supposed to be a little bit more friendlier, and I guess I wanted to go against type for this one,
yeah,
just to make it
and
as
shit.
dark as we could. But yeah, next year we'll go a little bit lighter, I promise.
Well, maybe
Maybe.
not.
Yep.
Who knows? Who knows? Maybe
Yep.
we'll have something special up the sleeve or whatever. But anyway,
Yep.
but with that, anything else to share with the viewers here aside from our show? And like we have our last couple shows here, and we'd love to hear from you. Good, the bad, the ugly, whatever you want. If you have some black metal suggestions, or you think we missed the mark or whatever, or you have your own anecdotal stories about the media, foundational
Yep.
things that help you trust or not trust whatever you see, read, or hear, or whatever, then we'd love to hear it.
Absolutely.
Sure.
Yep.
Absolutely. Anything else?
No, that covers it. We kind of nailed the nail into the coffin on this one.
Yeah.
So they don't come back out.
bloody stakes, bloody nails. So for sure.
Yep.
And with that, I've been Mike.
And I'm Thomas.
And we'll see you next week.
Stay metal. Ah.